Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 813A, and today's date is November 9th, 2015, and the title of this episode is Russia and China are now creating a completely separate gold market away from the dollar. Let's get right into the economic collapse financial news. Looking at the market today, it looks like the high-frequency traders, the plunge protection team, they tried everything they could, but they just couldn't get the market up where they wanted it. Finished down today, and we see a lot of the market has finished down. You know, we had these incredible job numbers that came out on Friday, brought the unemployment rate down to 5%. We're in full recovery according to the government right now. And when we look closely at these job numbers, which we discussed before on Friday, we see that a lot of these numbers are completely fake, phony, and false, and they are manipulated to the extreme. I mean, the BLS is out there telling us that they created 271,000 jobs in October. And of course, they beat expectations. But when we look closely, we see there's a lot wrong with these numbers. I mean, first of all, 145,000 of all the jobs, or 54%, are jobs arbitrarily added to the number by the birth-death model. The birth-death model provides an estimate of the net amount of unreported jobs lost to business closings and the unreported jobs created by new business openings. The model is based on a normally functioning economy, unlike the one of the past 7 years, and thus overestimates the number of jobs from new business and underestimates the losses from closures. If we kind of get rid of all this, the birth-death model, we only added about 126,000 jobs. And we have to say, who got these jobs? Well, it was low-paying part-time work. So we went from full-time jobs, and they were replaced with part-time jobs, and it went to those people 55 and older. So let's think about this for a second. This is not indicative of a recovery. What we're doing is we're swapping out full-time to part-time, and the older population is taking up the jobs. The younger population, they cannot find work whatsoever. So this 5% number is completely meaningless in what is really going on in the labor force. Normally, during a real economic recovery, people enter the labor force and the participation rate rises. But we're seeing the opposite occur right now. So if we were actually in a recovery, would half of the 25-year-old population be living with their parents? I mean, right now the real job situation is so poor that young people are unable to form households at this point. That's how bad it is. And when we look at the rest of the industry, and we look through these manipulated numbers they continually throw at us, we see that everything is the opposite of what the U.S. government is telling us. I mean, look at Caterpillar, for instance. 34 months of non-existing sales. I mean, basically, the entire industrial market is in a full-fledged depression. And we have proof of this because we see that the equipment of Caterpillar, which normally costs like $2.9 million, and this is a Caterpillar 992C wheel loader, can be bought for $15,000, a 99% discount. This is because they can't get rid of their equipment. There's no one out there to sell it to right now because the entire thing is collapsing. And we see for 34 months, Caterpillar has had terrible, terrible sales. 34 months compared to the recession, the Great Recession, which was 19 months of negative sales, we're seeing 34 months of negative sales. This shows us that we are completely not in a recovery whatsoever. The Baltic Dry Index, which is the raw material for goods, has dropped once again to 628 points, continually falling. This is the raw material the factories use to produce goods. These goods then are sold to stores, businesses, And, the people go out and purchase these goods. But we're not seeing this. People are being laid off. People don't have this discretionary funds. And this is why we see the Baltic-Dry Index continually falling. Usually at this time, the Baltic-Dry Index is rising. We are not seeing this whatsoever. Now, a former chief U.S. accountant is saying that the U.S. debt is 3 times more than you think. The former U.S. comptroller says right now the U.S. debt is around $65 trillion than the $18 trillion that is being said to us. And then we hear things like, no, it's really around $200 trillion. But let's go with the $65 trillion. He is saying thanks to unfunded liabilities, which simply cannot be ignored, we have a debt that is about $65 trillion. And there's no way to pay this off. He's saying that Americans have lost touch with reality when it comes to spending. Yeah, well, this is absolutely true. Because the American people, the American government, when you have a credit card, an unlimited credit card like the United States government, they will continually spend and spend and spend and spend. And for those people, you know what I mean. I was caught up in that at one time, where you get that credit card. A lot of people get the credit card right after high school, sometimes in college. And all of a sudden you have the ability just to swipe it. And all of a sudden you can make a purchase. And you don't worry about the payment until later. Well, this is what the U.S. government's been doing. This is what a lot of people are doing. And we have lost sense of what real money is. And this was part of their plan. And we see right now that this is a huge problem here in the United States, especially when everyone is losing their jobs, especially when prices are going up, especially when people are making less, and we continually take on more and more debt. It doesn't work out in the end. And we know the central bankers, the U.S. government, they're doing whatever they possibly can to make it that everyone goes electronic. They don't want people to have cash whatsoever. And right now, the central bankers are moving towards a cashless society. They need a cashless society to keep this system operational. They're nervous about people taking cash out, about taking it out of the system, and they cannot let this happen. Right now, there are test cases around the world because there is a war on cash, and it's advancing on all fronts. One area that is pretty much getting rid of all physical currency is Scandinavia. Sweden became the first country to enlist its own citizens as largely willing guinea pigs. Negative interest rates in a cashless society. Credit Suisse reports no matter where you go or what you want to purchase, you will find a small sign saying we don't accept cash. A similar situation is unfolding in Denmark, where nearly 40% of the paying demographic uses mobile pay, which is all payments on using a smartphone. In Africa, the sub-Saharan Africa, people do not have bank accounts, but they do have mobile phones. And right now they are pushing a cashless society in this area. And these are all test cases. And this will then spread to other countries. And paying with cash is basically a better alternative than no cash. One reason is you can hold it physically. Second of all, you know how much you have and how much you're spending. Third of all, there's no intermediaries. So someone doesn't profit from the transaction. Using no cash, there's always a middleman. And what we're seeing right now is that the central banks, they need to get rid of the cash. They're nervous because of what happened in Greece, where the people started to remove their funds from the banks. And as more and more people remove their funds, it gets harder and harder to do bail-ins, because part of the bail-in process is to trap those funds inside the banks. And with negative interest rates, they're very nervous about people taking their funds out of the bank and keeping it, not using it. And the only way that the central banks can maintain negative interest rates is by abolishing cash altogether. I mean, if we listen to Chief Economist Andrew Hadelaine from Bank of England, as long as cash exists, there's no way of preventing a depositor from doing the logical thing, taking their money out of the bank and parking it where the erosive effects of NERP can't reach it. And we are moving towards a cashless society. They need to do this at this point. And we will see this accelerate. We will see it seep into more and more countries. Right now, the ECB, a consensus is forming at the European Central Bank to take the interest rate it charges the banks to park money deeper into negative territory in December. 4 governing council members said a move that could weaken the euro and push up inflation. And this is very strange, because out in Europe, they want to push negative interest rates to weaken the euro and push up inflation. In the US, they want the rate hike that's going to be used to push up inflation. So we have 2 separate things going on here to have the same outcome, which makes no sense whatsoever. Now, Russia and China, they are looking to move away from the private Western Central Bank gold market. They're going to create an entirely different gold market, one that JP Morgan Chase, HSBC, Deutsche Bank cannot control whatsoever, but one that China, Russia, and others of like-mind control can take charge of. The new approach is connected closely with China-led New Silk Road project and the Shanghai-based Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. In May of 2015, Beijing announced it had established a state-run gold investment fund aiming to bolster China's role in global trade. The new initiative is part of China's ambitious One Belt, One Road plan, the Silk Road Gold Fund, which will invest in mining projects in the regions along the New Silk Road, encouraging central banks of its members to increase their holdings in precious metals. And Russia is actively cooperating with China in this field, adding that just before the creation of China's new gold fund, the countries inked a deal to explore the gold reserves in Russia's Magadan region. So China and Russia at this point are pushing to create a gold market which is not part of the private Western Central Bank gold market. And what they're trying to say is that this will not be able to be manipulated by them, which is going to cause a major, major problem. And we're starting to see a lot of this where Russia, China, many of the other nations are moving further and further away from the dollar. And this is going to pose a problem. The private Western Central Bank system cannot allow this to happen. Because if Russia, China do all this and they reevaluate and all of a sudden gold is really worth $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 or whatever currency they're going to price this in, this is going to pose a huge problem for the private Western Central Bank system, because that will show that gold is being manipulated, silver is being manipulated, and they will not let this happen. And this is why they're pushing so hard for an event, a war, to cover up this entire economic collapse system. They have to. They have to do something, because they cannot be blamed for this collapse. They've been preparing. They've been getting ready. They've been pushing, because they understand at this point that they need to bring this system down themselves. They can't allow an outside force to do this without them controlling it. And as we're learning, they've controlled the 2008 crash, they controlled the 1929 crash, the 2001 crash, and this is what they're doing. And remember, you need to be prepared for what is coming. It's either they're going to bring it down themselves, or there's going to be an outside force. But we're going to end up in the same place, where we have the system completely fall apart. The only difference is, will they be blamed, the U.S. government, central bankers, or will they blame somebody else? And if you're stocking up on food, continue to do it. Make sure you have medical supplies. Make sure you have a weapon to protect your family. Make sure you have water. Make sure you have a system that can filter water. Make sure you have toiletries, extra medicine. Someone has a heart problem, diabetes, or anything like that. If you're just starting out, you can use lifereliance.com. They have water filtration systems. They have bug out bags. You can customize your order. But whatever you're doing, continue to do it. Don't be fooled. Think about 2008 when the Fed came out and said they're not forecasting a recession anytime soon. They said this during the year the stock market crashed. During the year we entered the recession. So whatever they're saying, it's always the opposite. And you need to be prepared. Now, we realize the TPP is in Congress. They have 90 days to review it. The president already said they're going to review it. He's going to sign it, I mean. And we realize the TPP, there's a lot in there. It's about 5,000 pages plus. It is definitely not a benefit to the people. It's a benefit to the corporations, the central bankers. And we reviewed part of it where there was one section where they're going to turn the United States into a third world country, where they're going to bring in foreign workers into this country and not pay them the U.S. wages. They'll be paying them whatever country they originated from in their wages. So any worker here in the United States will have a very difficult time going up against someone from another country. And basically what it will do is it will bring down the wages of America. And we can see why this is happening, because as time goes on and the U.S. dollar is devalued and it loses its reserve status, the United States will then turn into a third world country. And it looks like they're getting the United States people prepared for this. And this TPP is not a benefit to the people of any country, actually. It's a benefit to the corporations. And even Canada, the former co-CEO of Research in Motion BlackBerry, Jim Balsillie, says Canadians have been outfoxed in the Trans-Pacific Partnership and now will be forever bound by a deal harmful for innovation. The TPP structures everything forever in line with the U.S. economic interests while limiting Canadian companies' growth. And we can't get out of it, he says. It's such brilliantly systematic encirclement. I'm just in awe at its powerful purity by the Americans. We've been outfoxed, he said. And every single country has been outfoxed. Every single country has to come in line. And this is going to be a complete disaster as time moves on. Look at Obamacare. It's completely falling apart. It is not a benefit to the people whatsoever. Neither is the TPP. 5,000 pages, and they just released it right now because Congress has 90 days to review it. Hopefully Congress does the right thing and does not pass this, because this will not help us, the people. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.